Now that we have our seeds planted, watered, ready to go, you want to get your whole station set up. You want to give them as much light as possible, whether you have grow lights or not. So if you don't have grow lights, pick your sunniest window. South is best, west is next. So those directions are great. I do recommend personally using a grow light. It prevents the seedlings from getting too leggy, and it keeps you from having to rotate your tray, because your seedlings are photolytic, so they'll stretch toward the window light, and then you need to rotate it every time you water so that they correct themselves and you don't get bent seedlings once they're larger. So I like to have a grow light to supplement, especially because on days like this it's really rainy and dark and we're just not getting that much sunlight anyway in Minnesota. So a grow light is always a good idea. You can use incandescent, fluorescent, or LED. We offer a bunch of different options here. This is one of the most popular ones here. This one has the light spectrum specifically for seeds and greens. This is a long tube style light that you're gonna put above your flats. With LEDs, it doesn't matter too much how close the lights are to your seedlings. If you do have an incandescent bulb, it is important to keep it very close to the tops of your seedlings, roughly 4 to 6 inches at all times. So make sure that you have it hung in a way, like with chains and S-hooks, where you can raise it as the seedlings get taller, because you don't want it, as the seedlings get taller, to stay at the same level and then the seedlings will run into it. So you want to be able to raise and lower it. With LEDs, it's not so important. We also have, this again is one that's specifically for seeding and for green plants, foliage plants. And this is a type that can just screw into a regular lamp fixture or light bulb fixture. So that can give you some more options if you don't have a setup already to hang your grow lights and you need to sort of plan that out or attach grow lights to the underside of a shelf above your plants. These can be nice to start out with just to make sure that you're getting some extra light. Under the grow light, I would also recommend using a heat mat, and that just goes right underneath your seedling tray here. This is one that covers one tray, which this is a standard 10 by 20 seed tray, one flat. We also have ones that cover 2 flats, 4 flats, and this raises the ambient air temperature 10 to 20 degrees, which really helps aid in germination. And then it also helps to keep it on if you have a growing area that is rather cool and damp. So when I start seedlings in my basement, I always keep a heat mat on. Generally you turn it off after germination. I keep mine on because it's just too cold and damp, and this helps prevent damping off, which is seedling disease that results from pathogens on the surface of your soil, and that generally happens when it's cooler and more damp. So I like to always use a heating mat. So you're gonna have that set up, you're gonna have your grow lights above, and then you're gonna have your humidity domes here. This is the one that came with this Jiffy kit here, and it doesn't work with my little labels here, but the idea is that you just put it right over until the seeds germinate. It prevents them from drying out, it's just an added measure for that. And then once they germinate, you can see how it's very short. Once they germinate and start coming up, you're gonna take that off and remove it. If your house or wherever you are growing is very, very dry, then you can continue to use a humidity dome even as your seedlings get taller. Be careful with doing this. You don't want it to get too damp in there, because again, that can cause seedling disease. But this is much taller than the other one here, and so you can use it as your seedlings get quite tall. It comes with vents in the top and on the sides here, so that if you get too much moisture, you can take these panels, which you just attach, and turn them to let in fresh air. And that will again help prevent any seedling disease if it gets too moist in there and you're starting to see condensation. But those are two things that are really nice to have, especially if you have forced air in your house, drier weather. After that, you just want to make sure that your seedlings stay moist. Keep an eye on them, check them regularly, make sure your cats aren't eating them. And then Once they have 2 sets of true leaves, that's when you can start to fertilize. The first set of leaves on any plant are not true leaves. They're actually seed leaves or cotyledons. So the first ones, ignore those, but then once you have 2 sets of leaves after that, that's when you can start fertilizing. And if you're growing something that is mainly a foliar plant, like a rosemary or a basil, I would just use a standard plant food that's a 10-10-10, and be sure to use it at 1/4 to 1/2 the strength recommended on the bottle, because these are very young seedlings. They cannot use up all of the nutrients, and you'll just have salt buildup in your soil, which can burn your roots if you use too much and you use the strength you would on your normal houseplants. If you have a blooming flower, say the zinnias that I have here, you're gonna want to use something like this Bloom fertilizer, which is organic. It's from a spoma. Very easy. Both of these you just mix into your water when you're watering. And again, just make sure to do it at 1/4 to 1/2 strength. It's not as important with organics because they will not burn your roots, which is why I always prefer organics myself, because it's harder to mess things up. It just makes it easier. It takes the thought out of it. Another thing I want to cover is thinning your plants. So you've been fertilizing, your plants are getting taller, but remember we started with 2 to 3 seeds in each cell. I like to pick the strongest plant. So I'm going to grab this basil plant here. This is just a nice little herb snip from Corona. Make sure that it's sharp, make sure that it's sterile. And when you thin, you don't want to just, so see, this one is much smaller than these larger, healthier ones. So this is one I would thin out. But you don't want to yank it out of the soil, because in doing that, you're going to disturb the roots of the seedlings that you want to keep. So the best thing to do is just take a sterile snips and just snip that plant off right at soil level. Just like that. And I'm going to go through here and I'm going to pick the strongest ones, because we don't want them competing for light. So I can maybe keep 3 in here. This again is a much shorter one. It's kind of off to the side. So I'll take that one down. These 2 are very close together, so they're gonna compete for light. You can see they're already getting tangled, and the leaves are not all gonna get the light that they need. So I'm gonna pick the best one of those 2 and keep that one and get rid of the other one. Now keep in mind, if you're doing your thinning in cells, you're gonna wanna just keep 1 plant per cell. This is a much larger pot, so I'm gonna keep 3. But now there's so much more air circulation between the seedlings, and they're gonna get a lot more light, and they're gonna be able to absorb those nutrients without competing with each other so much. Because look at all of these that we got rid of. All of these were competing with these plants, and now these will be able to grow stronger.